welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Peace and love. I'm Nielle, and Romeo is out today.
And soulmates, on today's report, Black leaders continue to push for voting rights. And we'll have a conversation about the disparities in crack cocaine sentencing with Kevin Ring, president of an organization called Families Against Mandatory Minimums, and Dejarian Eccles, who received a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence for possession with intent to distribute at least 50 grams of cocaine.
Plus, Fox Soul teams up with Michael B. Jordan's Legacy Classic this weekend, and HBCU Heroes co-founder Tracy Pennywell is here to show you how you can join in too. Also, Deion Sanders has had a big week. Find out what's going on with Primetime.
We have that and so much more. You know why? Because it's our voice and it's our truth. So let's talk about it.
Hey there, soulmates. Good evening. Thank you for joining us this Thursday. Let's get to our top story. More Black leaders today are pushing President Joe Biden to put his full weight behind voting rights legislation. National Action Network founder Reverend Al Sharpton says, quote, "We want them to be more aggressive and public about it. Time is running out. While we are procrastinating, states are changing their laws." Senator Raphael Warnock says voting rights, it needs to be the very next thing we take up. It needs to be the very next thing. And in fact, we should not go home for recess until we at least have a defined and clear path for how we're going to pass voting rights. Earlier this week, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris underscored the need to protect voting rights at a Democratic National Committee holiday fundraiser. So that is an interesting point that Reverend Sharpton makes, right? Because that's been something that many people are frustrated with. And we kind of talked about this, the differences between how former President Donald Trump boasted about things he was doing or what he wanted done, what he was saying to his adversaries, and just anything in ways that President Biden isn't necessarily doing, and what that is doing is kind of creating a narrative that maybe some of his wins and some of his non-wins, but some of his wins aren't being, people don't realize them. And so I wonder what it would do for the conversation as a whole, what it would do going into the midterms if he says, hey, these are the conversations I'm having with Manchin and Sinema. This is what I'm telling them to do. And also, of course, yeah, there's the worry as if the president says, I'm pushing for this, I'm asking for this, I'm demanding this, and then it's not done.
Exactly.
How even that will make him look. So it's almost a lose-lose situation. Right. But at this point, all of the leaders, every day we have a story of someone else saying what's happening right now isn't enough.
Yeah, you know, I think that the problem, we as Americans, we want it now. And I remember when he was inaugurated, I always go back to that very first day he was inaugurated, and you were like, we want to get him into the Oval Office and get things done right away. And I was like, wait, he just got here, you know, and everybody was like, no, let's get things done right away. And so, you know, back to your point, make a great point that if he doesn't say anything, then we think he's not doing anything. But then whatever he says that he's going to do, everyone is taking notes very carefully. So whatever he does say that he's going to do, he has to make promise on that, and he has to make sure every single promise is done exactly to the T. Like he said, just going back to student loans and things of that nature, we are still tracking him on that. So I think that he's doing a good job of making sure when he makes a message that it is clear and it's concise, and he's actually going to be able to follow through on that. But one other thing I wanted to add here is that, you know, not to say that any other bill is not important. You know, now he's trying to prioritize which bills are more important and putting voting rights in the forefront. Not to say that any other bill is not important, but it is very refreshing to see that Biden is putting voting rights at the forefront and making it a priority.
Look, people are pissed. People are pissed off, and Biden is not putting voting rights at the forefront. That's why Black leaders are pushing up on him this week. That's why you have people in Arizona, those young students who are now in Washington, D.C., demanding a meeting with the Biden administration, and they're on their 11th day of a hunger strike. I just got word that 2 of those students will join us right here tomorrow on the Black Report to talk about it. And so right now, I think that the push for voting rights and the change for voting rights, it's not going to happen on Capitol Hill. It's going to happen by the people like Joe Madison, who is picking up more headlines, more national attention, because he's on his 2nd month of striking on a hunger strike. These students, these civil rights leaders, and thank God for Senator Raphael Warnock, because he is on Capitol Hill. He almost didn't vote for that. he almost didn't vote for that bill, that debt ceiling bill, because he was so pissed off about how they just keep disregarding voting rights. So I think that black and brown people, especially the black community, has had enough. When you think about how many people have died, when you think about John Lewis, when you think about the Voting Rights Act and how it took so much to get that act passed, and for us to be in the position that we are in as black people, it makes you want to holler, in the words of Marvin Gaye. And speaking of the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King III and his family and other advocacy groups announced that they will spend Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday next year in Phoenix to rally and organize for voting rights. Now, the march will kick off a nationwide campaign with more than 50 other groups to press Congress to pass federal legislation protecting the right to vote ahead of the national MLK holiday observed generally on the third Monday in January. MLK Jr.'s granddaughter, Yolanda Renee King, will join her mother and father, the oldest surviving child of MLK Jr., at the Arizona State Capitol on January 15th to call on Congress to end the Senate filibuster and pass legislation such as the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, both of which are still sitting on the senator's desk on Capitol Hill. So once again, to my point, I am not really concerned about those lawmakers on Capitol Hill. It is really taking us back to the 1950s and 60s, where it was the people. It was people of color. It was all people who felt the need and saw the disenfranchisement that was happening to people of color that stood up and pressed the White House administration, that pushed lawmakers on Capitol Hill, even though they didn't want to. They didn't want to do it then, just like they don't want to do it now. But it's going to take us, the people, to demand that we have a democracy and we live up to the creed of what it is supposed to be in the United States of America.
Very powerful, Niele. Just coming off the heels of what you were saying is that, black people in America, we always complain about not having enough days in the year, having Black History Month, for example, only being, the shortest month, only having 28 days to represent us for the entire year. For this family here, Martin Luther King Day is a day that is so important and so powerful for this entire family, but the entire world stops on MLK Day to recognize Martin Luther King. So the fact that the family is willing to forego, in a sense, us, honoring him to make sure the world is okay and make sure the black community is taken care of is very powerful. On to our next story here. A powerful network of conservative election lawyers and groups, with links to Donald Trump have spent millions of dollars promoting new and heavy voting laws that many battleground states, such as Georgia and Texas, have enacted. The moves have
prompted election and voting rights watchdogs in the U.S. to warn about the suppression of non-white voters, aimed at providing Republicans an edge in coming elections.
Thank you so much, Brooke. The lawyers and groups spearheading self-professed election integrity measures, including some figures who pushed Trump's baseless claims of fraud after the 2020 election. Watchdogs say that tightening state voting laws endanger the rights of black voters and other communities of color by creating rules limiting absentee voting and same-day registration. We are a family here, here on Foxwell's Black Report. Thanks so much, love. So the thing that is very important, and someone on Twitter said this, and it was so important to me that I had to bring it here, is that there are villains and then there are villains behind the villains, right? And I want to just break it down. So you have people who are plain as day, who you see the governors, you see the mayors, you see the lawmakers, you see everybody, and they're all out in front. They're doing interviews and they're online and they're on Instagram and they're making their voice heard. But then you have the people who are behind those people who are kind of like the people online where you say like Twitter fingers, who are kind of like pulling strings behind the scenes. These are those people that you really need to worry about, because we wonder, how are these people, how are their voices being heard so much? How are they getting all this money for commercials? How are they on the radio? How are they flooding our Instagram timelines? It's because this extra money that they're getting from these lawyers. And then who else to enact all these laws? I was reading that 19 states have enacted 33 new laws this year that will make it harder for Americans to vote. Who else better to make those 3 laws happen than lawyers?
Also just knowing the fact that in 2020, we saw the highest voter turnout in more than 100 years. And the reaction to that has been for many state leaders, and very open about it, to make it harder for people to vote. That has been a fascinating thing to watch.
And we need to make sure that just as these Republican attorneys are jumping into the election protection councils or with elections, that the NAACP and other civil rights organizations, they have a hotline. If you're a lawyer and you want to make sure that democracy is preserved and that Black and brown people have the right to vote, please reach out to these organizations. You could contact your local state, visit ballotpedia.org, NAACP, and make sure that you show up to the polls too, so that you can protect democracy and make sure that Black and brown people have a right to vote. And Brooke is absolutely right. The Republican Party is so petrified at the turnout that we just had with this last presidential election that they have created so many state laws to disenfranchise people of colors. They have also created these type of organizations with these attorneys. They are mobilizing to disenfranchise us. That's why we have to be so ready to counteract and be so motivated to vote that it's overwhelming, and it's understood that they are not going to take our votes. They're just not going to do it. This is an alarming problem that is happening in our country, and we just can't be passive about it. This is really serious business that everybody needs to have their eyes on right now.
Georgia Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker addressing allegations of past domestic violence towards his ex-wife. The former football star told Axios he is, quote, accountable for his behavior. He also told the outlet he has never broken the law, specifically in regards to other allegations of threatening behavior. He says they were made up. His statement also specified that, he is not, when referring to those allegations by two other women, he's not referring to the allegations against his ex-wife, again, going back to him saying he was accountable. Listen, the Republican Party is the party of family values, and so it will be interesting to see the reaction to this.
It's interesting because for a moment there were people online that were like, oh, he's taking accountability, but he's taking accountability. He's doing the bare minimum here. We're not going to congratulate someone who's doing the absolute bare minimum, something that he should have done anyway, that most people, you should be taking accountability for this, no matter which wife it was. It doesn't matter. He should be taking accountability for his actions. But we have to also add in here that whatever case he's trying to make for himself, it doesn't help that his son, I don't know if you guys have gotten a chance to see, his son is like doing interviews, making whatever he wants to fight for 10 times harder online.
I hope that voters in Georgia are paying attention to what's going on. You have Senator Raphael Warnock at the state capitol fighting for voting rights, and the only headline that Herschel Walker can come out with this week is that he's taking accountability for beating up on a woman. I mean, now you decide, voters, who you think you want representing you in your district. A person that is up on Capitol Hill lobbying for the things that will help you and your community and preserving your right to vote, or a person, and all of this is happening in his neck of the woods. He's not even with the Republicans on voter suppression. He's worried about his image and how he appears, and he wants people to see him as a good guy. I mean, pay attention to the headlines, and this is how you determine who you want to represent you in your city, state, and district.